Hello there. Good evening, everybody. Namaste. Thank you so much for taking your time off on a Friday evening and joining this employee engagement live session. I'm Shrikant Acharya. I'm the CEO at offineeds.com. And on today's episode, I have a very, very interesting personality. I cannot wait to get this started. But before we get it going, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Shrikant Acharya, CEO at offineeds.com. Offineeds is a leading company in the space of corporate gifts, merchandise, employee engagement, and so on. We have offices in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai. And I'm very passionate about merchandising, brand building, and about employee engagement. And we've had the opportunity as an organization to work with hundreds and close to a couple of thousand large organizations medium-sized organizations, and startups, and we get to see firsthand how organizations engage with their employees. And currently, in the current scheme of things, unfortunately, due to the COVID, the pandemic that's going on, employees are working from home. Working from home has become the new normal. So HRs of organizations and managements within different organizations are having an unforeseen challenge with respect to engaging with their employees as they continue to work from home. So Employee Engagement Live is a small initiative from OffiNeeds, where we try to bring in experts, authors, and people with the substantial amount of experience in the space of building large teams, engaging with teams, and so on, and asking them what they think about employee engagement in the new world. So today I have a very, very interesting person on the show, and let me tell you how I came across him. The Vikas Dua is his name. He's a very, very seasoned HR professional, and he's a blogger, he's an influencer, and his posts are really, really inspiring. And I kept following him, and I realized that he's come up with a book, and the book is called HR in My Heart. Now, the name itself was really, really catchy. I had to get myself this book. I ordered this book, and um, I got the book, and it was really, really interesting. Very, very well written. Lot of anecdotes, lot of stories, lot of poetry in the book. And it's all about his experiences as an HR professional, where he was working across different companies. So I'm super thrilled to be inviting Vikas Dua. So let me take a minute to introduce you all to Vikas and tell you a little bit about him. Vikas is currently the chief HR mentor at an organization called Attain. Now, Attain is a disruptive HR tech firm working on enhancing and democratizing knowledge sharing in the academic space. What that basically means is they put an effort to bridge the gap between industry expectations and the skill level that the organizations really have. Vikas is an accomplished HR leader with over 18 years of experience in the recruitment field, having worked with startups as well as large corporations like Wipro and Concentrix. And he's headed hiring initiatives across the APAC region. And uh, instrumentally, I mean, he's been instrumental in building careers for over, hold your breath, for over 1,20,000 individuals across different levels. That itself is very, very inspiring. In addition to that, he's also an advisor to the BRICS Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's a TEDx speaker. He's a blogger, and as a blogger on HR practices, and he's the author of this fantastic book. So first thing, HR in My Heart is the name of the book. I'd suggest you to go to Amazon, order that book, and once you read that book, leave him a review, because it's really, really exciting. So with that, let me bring onto the screen Vikas Dua. Vikas, welcome to Employee Engagement Live. I'm super excited that you were able to join today's episode. How are you doing today?
Oh, lovely, Shrikant, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. So first of all, tell us about the book. How did you tell us a little bit about why did you write the book? How did you get going, and how did you find the interesting name HR in My Heart?
Sure, Shrikant. Firstly, I think must thank you before I begin about the extremely knowledge. What should I say? Positive spin you gave to my introduction as well as to that of the book. So it's a pleasure to be here today. And
Thank you.
that book, I must point out, the one you're holding in your hand, is also a book which is very close to my heart, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that is the first book copy which actually went on a flight.
Oh,
I remember
yes,
this
yes.
clearly because I think you posted it, and so that will always be a very dear memory. Maybe someday I'll buy it off you.
You'll have to auction it.
Yeah. So, well, so great. Happy to talk about the book. Like I said somewhere in the book, it's a directory of my knowledge over the years, 18 years in the industry in HR, and I thought it was time to share some of that learning with the community, and that's how that book came about. Spent over 9 months trying to put it together, and the approach I've decided to use was to make it very objective, simplify leadership for young professionals,
Yeah.
for students,
Hmm.
because I've realized over my career as well, and knowing the general community at large, is that management books tend to scare off people.
That's
So
correct.
I just wanted it to not be something that sounded like the stuff was in the clouds. If you, I know you've read the book, so you can possibly think. It's very practical experiences that I've gone through, the leadership lessons that I've learned from them, and that's exactly the same what I've tried to communicate and guide the future generations to pick up. And of course, like you again pointed out, used a combination of prose and poetry, because
Yeah.
I shared some of the poetry on social media. It was well appreciated. I thought, why not then replicate some of that, and since the community has liked it, maybe they'll like this extension as well. So that's in a nutshell what this book is about. Labor of love, and I'm so glad that you and other people in the ecosystem have really appreciated it so much.
Awesome, awesome. That's great to hear, and absolutely no exaggeration. Like you said, you made it extremely simple, and there's a great combination of prose and poetry. And initially, when I read it on the cover, I didn't really understand what you mean by prose and poetry inside. But once you start getting into it, it's really unstoppable. Very light, very easy to read, and educative and entertaining at the same time. I love these stories about how somebody from your team got proposed somewhere halfway through a recruitment drive, how you had to go through somewhere in UP where there was gunshots
Shootout.
that started
Yeah.
getting fired in the middle of very very entertaining. So guys, this is a book you must have for a weekend read. It's absolutely interesting. All right, so let's say somebody has to read this book, right? What is the one point you want them to take away from reading this book?
The single underlying thought and the main primary point of this book is really that when it comes to leadership, your journey will have ups and downs. There's no doubt
Mm,
about it. Very few people will experience a linear upward chart. But
yeah.
if you want to navigate that journey and grow as a leader, it's very important to have and acquire certain desired behaviors, skills, attitudes that can actually help you navigate those twists and turns effectively. So that's what really the book is trying to convey.
All right, perfect. I think very well said, and absolutely true. Most people tend to think it's a straight path, which is going to have a certain incline maybe, but forget about all
True.
the ups and downs, the road bumps, the
Exactly.
meteor strikes that will happen on the way. So yeah, I think it's very very well conveyed. So before we go ahead, I want to tell the audience here that towards after about 15-20 minutes, we're going to open up for questions, and you have any questions, please make notes of what Vikas has to share here, because it's going to be extremely valuable. So any questions, please put it up there, and the most interesting questions will get a signed copy of this book from Vikas Dua. All right, so with that, so hold on to your questions. Another 15-20 minutes, I'll ask you to type it out, and you can do that, and you can have the opportunity to win yourself that book. So Vikas, what according to you is employee engagement?
Oh, something that really is extremely simple, but at the same time extremely difficult to execute. Right now, what do I mean by that? If you go by the traditional ASA/CRM kind of research, which has been done across global organizations, when it comes to employee engagement, the number one driver factor, Shrikant, these research reports say, is nothing else but the work itself.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not the beating of drums on the floor. It is not organizing competitions. No, it goes much more deeper than that. So what is employee engagement? And I firmly believe this myself as well, is that your entire ecosystem, the organization has to be sculpted in a manner that the conditions are so conducive for all the employees, irrespective of level, function, department, hierarchy, to be able to give their best every day. And if they are doing that, then you can say that the organization or the employees are well engaged, right? They're aligned to the organization's goals and values. They're able to contribute effectively. They're motivated to do their best, and at the same time not neglecting their own well-being, because that's very critical, right? And also it's somewhere an emotional state where everyone then feels extremely passionate, collaborative, energetic to kind of push the boundaries, to go beyond the job description. And that's what, again, a lot of research will qualify and tell you very clearly that engaged employees are very different from what we call satisfied employees. Satisfied employees will come in, do their 9 hours, do their deliverables, and go back home and watch the clock till the next day when they need to come back. Engaged employees, once they enter the office, you can be sure that unless they are satisfied personally, they will not want to even go back home. So that's what the real meaning of employee engagement is, and that's what I think most organizations need to try and keep revisiting their environments and see whether they're actually creating this kind of environment, which is creating these kind of individuals on an ongoing basis.
Right. Absolutely. I think you really nailed it. Uh, Absolutely bang on. The first thing, the most important thing is, are you enjoying what you're doing? If you're enjoying what you're doing, you don't really need a break, right? You don't really need.
Yeah.
Uh, if you had a break, this is what you would do. That would be a dream job to have. Uh, but when you're doing this at scale, right? If it's all right to be able to do it in a small organization where you have 50, 100 people or something like that, you can handpick a lot of people. But large organizations, you worked with Wipro, you worked with Concentrix, where you are hiring in hundreds and maybe even thousands of people at a time, right? So when you do that, how do you really pick people, and how do you do that connection between identifying what they're interested in doing and giving them a role where they can really enjoy themselves on a daily basis?
Sure. So great question, Shrikant. And I think while the industry and large organizations, like you rightly said, have tried to do a lot of work in this direction and have succeeded to a great extent, yes, there has been that challenge of creating what one would call a one size fits all approach.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, when you're onboarding 15, 20,000 employees, like the kinds
Yeah.
one easily sees in an IT slash BP organization, it is
Right.
almost impossible to give a very individual, customized view or
Correct.
engage on a very personal level. So the attempt is always to try and do what we call, the 80/20 rule,
Hmm.
where you try
Hmm.
and create processes which at least delight and address the needs of at least 80% of the population. And for that, you have to make sure that your processes, your systems are well defined, established, almost to the point of an SOP driven approach,
Right.
where you go that extra mile to ensure that there are connects happening with employees, there are then work and non-work needs being addressed, concerns being handled, and so on and so forth. So that's where one really needs to actually make it more of a process oriented organization rather than a person oriented organization, because if you don't do that, you will not manage the scale at all. That's a fact.
Hmm. Right, right. Perfect. I think that's a good approach. That 80/20 principle. I think I'm a big fan of 80/20 principle in everything, and applying it to recruitment and employee engagement is a great strategy too. Let me ask you a specific question. You mentioned the difference between satisfied employees and engaged employees. Now, engaged employees is what everybody wants. Satisfied employees, you should be you shouldn't complain too much if you have satisfied employees, because you can also have disgruntled employees, right? So can you tell me what you think needs to be done to be able to kind of elevate satisfied employees to engaged employees?
See, great. Srikant, again, today we are in a age where it's an age of instant gratification,
Hmm.
and it's a highly connected digital age. We know that
Yes. Yes.
employees today are living multiple lives in a sense. So they have their own personal family ecosystem, they have their friends ecosystem, they have the work space, And then there's of course this increased requirement today, desire today to also tend to self, which is
Hmm.
great because for a lot of years that has been ignored, especially the time that maybe you and I grew up in industry.
Hmm.
So what this means is that now you've got to go that extra mile to make a connect with each of your employees. And in my honest view, especially in large organizations, that cannot be done without intervention of technology.
Hmm.
So that's something that I think we are happy to talk a little bit more about in detail if you'd like. But that's where we are seeing that platforms are coming to the aid for HR teams, for engagement teams, to be able to understand what works for Shrikant versus what works for a Vikas.
Right.
Because there's no point organizing a movie Friday if Vikas is just not into movie.
Hmm.
It's not going to
Right.
lead to any engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. I think that's well said. We will address the technology bit. That's something I think which is very, very important, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But before we get there, I want to remind the audience here that think up of the questions that you have, make notes. In another 15-20 minutes, I'm going to open the forum for any questions that you might have, and we'll have those answers from Vikas. Now, because something interesting in this particular interview is generally I'm the only guy who's wearing a t-shirt with the logo on the t-shirt, right? And mostly the my guests don't have that. I cannot ignore the fact that you're wearing a t-shirt with your logo. So I want to ask you, your opinion about the value of merchandise in employee engagement, and overall, what role does merchandise play?
So, my honest perspective, Shrikant, is that I'm a huge fan of merchandise, branded merchandise, organization merchandise. I go back to my roots. Like you rightly pointed out, I spent a good 10 formative years at Wipro, and
Hmm.
I'm sure you would have encountered being in Bengaluru that most of the IT companies would have their senior leadership, middle level leadership wearing these branded shirts with the corporate logo, and
Hmm.
that's where this concept was introduced to me. And I have really seen that at a personal level as well as within my teams, because I kind of propagated it there as well. Wearing your brand on your heart actually increases the affinity to 10x. I still recall my days as a young manager, with carrying my laptop bag, standing at the Delhi airport, ready to board a flight to Calcutta, and we would have 10 people turning their heads to and nodding, "Oh, Wipro," and
Hmm.
it's a very positive cycle that starts there. You feel proud about yourself, you feel affinity towards the organization, you want to do more for the company and the organization, and the
Yeah.
company then sees your passion and performance and rewards you. So I'm a huge fan, and I just feel that maybe not all organizations do it as effectively as they should. At the end of the day, someone carrying a laptop bag branded with your logo, or a sipper to the gym, is in a sense free publicity for you.
Yeah.
And whether you are a marketing person in the organization, or you're or the talent recruitment head, you should be putting that logo out there in 20 different places, no doubt
Right.
about it.
Absolutely, exactly what I feel about it. As a matter of fact, here's a quick story. I was working with Infosys in 2004. I got recruited from campus, and I was working as a software developer. And I got a T-shirt from Infosys, and that's how I got inspired to start a corporate gifting company on my own. So I'm an
Wow.
absolute merchandise geek myself too. So I can absolutely resonate with what it is that you're saying. All right. So
I've seen, I'm just sorry, I'm butting in here, but I have actually seen employees, whenever you roll out a competition which has company branded goodies as awards. I've seen employees, step over each other to try and win some of those. That's the level of excitement they seem to have.
yeah,
But
yeah.
on the flip side, not all managers and leaders recognize that, and that's what should change.
Right. While we are on that note, I want to tell you about a quick study that we recently did. We did an analysis of posts where people are putting pictures of them getting goodies to their homes, new joining kits, and all kinds of goodies when they put it on LinkedIn, Instagram. The engagement levels are through the roof. We did a comparison of how much engagement as a percentage that they're getting, and we did an analysis of what is the growth in engagement, previous post which they put versus the new post which they put. What is the engagement level, and the growth rate is as high as 100x to 200x sometimes. So that's still, that's proof to the pudding that the people love merchandise, and it's a great swag, is a great thing to show off. So before we get completely distracted, let's just get back to the interview and try to and I want you to answer this before we go to the technology question. It's still there on my mind. I want to ask you, uh, what is changed right now. Work from home is the new norm, and employee engagement has become an even bigger challenge. So what, according to you, are the top one, two, or three challenges with engaging employees in a work from home kind of a situation?
So the challenges are immense, Shrikant, and they start right at the top. What do I mean by that? Very clearly, the first thing is that the biggest challenge today is to understand what employees are going through,
Yeah.
right? Because each one of the employees is going through a different experience. And at least when they were in the office, you had to worry only about the network connectivity or the air conditioning on the floor and some of those transactional items. But today you don't know at whose home, whose family member is impacted, who doesn't have that infrastructure which is supporting remote working, uh,
Yeah.
who's not able to concentrate on work because of other family responsibilities and so on. So understanding what each of your employees is going through is the biggest challenge. So that's at the root. The second big challenge is, of course, the whole remodeling of work delivery. Because, to be fair, one step before engagement would obviously be ensuring at least the bare sustainable level of work is happening. And while I know in the last 7 to 9 months, organizations have managed to move the needle tremendously on that front. But again, it's, in my view, something that has not happened through a design framework. It's happened more through a let's adjust and move on approach, which is that
Right.
we were doing it this way, we'll just see how it can be done remotely. But versus an approach of analyzing a process or a deliverable from the ground up and trying to reinvent it, given that now it has to be done remotely. So there's a difference there, subtle difference there, if you can follow me.
Yes. Yes.
uh, Linked to that is also the angle that now the goalposts are changing more frequently for every organization, whether it's a e-commerce organization, an IT organization, a retail, with the kind of waves we are seeing, and the ups and downs, curfews, lockdowns, the mix of them. Some territories have it, some don't. So
Yeah.
it's almost like turning your ship's direction every few days to kind of now move in the new desired direction. The bigger
Correct.
one also, when it comes to engagement, I'll just take a minute here, is that when it comes to employees and their comfort with working from home, we tend to actually look at the entry level or the base frontline level employees, which is a great thing, no doubt about it. But one level which is getting missed out immensely is the mid level or the manager level, where they really have to direct, control, supervise, manage 5, 10, 15, 20 people. And now just
Yeah.
imagine what these uh, individuals are going through.
Mm.
In the earlier scenario, they could walk down their bay, just touch base with each one of them, solve their issues right there and then. Now, to give that same instruction to 10 people, they have to have 10 different phone calls or try and get all onto a Zoom call. So,
Yeah.
engagement, therefore, has been totally just kind of impacted at all levels, given that there's such a huge amount of disruption that has happened.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think you nailed it. You found the absolute. I think the top three challenges have very well been addressed there. So I want to request the audience. You can now start posting any questions. I see Mohammad Hisham already has a question. We'll come to that in a bit. So rest of you, if you have any questions, please start typing it on the comment box. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, we can see your comments right here. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to start taking those questions. Uh, Before that, I want to ask you, employee expectations have also changed, right? Over the probably in the early 2000, or little before 2000, it was like government jobs are the most secure jobs, and things, the employee expectations earlier, it was absolutely if I get the salary on time, it's good. Right now the expectations are totally different, right? So what have you seen, from the time you started recruitment to now? What is the change that you see in expectations of employees?
Oh, immense change, Shrikant. In fact, since I've followed the economy, the development, of course, the industry over the years, and not only through my own work, but even by reading and just generally learning from others. I have a very interesting take on this, which I'll throw. And I'll take it even beyond 2000 and earlier, because I think that to understand the context is very important for our listeners. If you go back to the time when India got independence and thereafter, and industry started building up in the nation. I think the key word which defined all our great grandparents or great grandparents was really survival, right? Survive.
Mm.
So they had to really just find some vocation to manage to get those few meals for the family, and that was it. That was sustenance, and that was their core requirement. 1990s liberalization and the Indian economy opening up to another different level, which brought in the Infosys and the Wipros,
Yeah.
also brought in a whole new culture and a new wave where individuals wanted to then strive. So from survive, it went to strive.
Yeah.
And in strive, as I'm sure you would have realized, it was that whole rush and push for promotions, for gains,
Mm.
for bigger responsibilities, for bigger titles, and almost in a sense l- copying from the West and the MNC culture, and wanting to make it the bigger houses, the bigger cars, and so on and so forth. And now, in the last few years, what we moved on from strive is really to thrive, which is
Mm.
what the millennials are doing, really, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah.
they want to work on their own terms. They want to
Mm.
work with employers who are concerned about them, who treat them as equals in that equation, uh,
Mm.
who give them opportunities to be themselves,
Right.
who allow them to not only contribute to the organization but also to society at large. And
Mm.
that's the kind of change I've personally observed. So today, we kind of, when you're trying to recruit or we are looking at hiring colleagues for the organization, uh, it would be almost difficult to look at 4 5 year horizons,
Mm.
and unless you have a very highly engaged HR engine to make sure that you'll continue to evolve as the employees continue to evolve. And
Right.
that's the big change that I'm observing.
Right. Absolutely. So we'll come to the technology question now. So tell us about what has changed in technology and how can technology be used to engage employees in a far more efficient manner.
So, like we hinted at the past, in the earlier part of this session, is that whenever your team is large, whenever your number of touch points are more, it makes
Mm.
sense to integrate technology. And
Right.
the reason for that is that with the technology frameworks, you can actually do what is called mass customization. So
Mm.
you can
Mm.
differentiate between what Shrikant likes versus what a Vikas likes, and address their needs accordingly. And thereby, you will build that connect much more deeply. Now, for
Right.
example, one of the organizations where I'm advising as a member of the board is employee engagement platform, where the journey is really mapped from the time an employee starts to the time the employee leaves. And
Mm.
through signals provided by the employees during that journey, the organization and the leaders are able to understand what is working well, what is not working well,
Right. Mm.
what are the interventions required to solve certain issues. And that's all possible because you have technology. Because at the end of the day, a manager leading a 10-member team, how many conversations can he have? How much out of
Mm.
those conversations can he retain?
Mm.
How much of action, or how many actions can he take on those retained learnings from those conversations? That's
Right.
always questionable, right? So
Absolutely.
you have to look at employee engagement with a human touch, but supported by the technology framework, because today they're highly robust, highly trustworthy, and highly customizable. So why not?
Absolutely. I love the term that you use, mass customization. So my correct me if my understanding is correct. It's about segmenting the on the basis of people's expectations and basis of people's requirements, basis the people's challenges, kind of segmenting them into different groups and offering solutions to that respective segment instead of just asking everybody to watch a movie on Friday.
Exactly. And we,
Right.
we should learn from great brands like Nike, for example, because this is term which is coming from that industry. Today, on the Nike US website, you can go in and order a sneaker for yourself with the kind of sole you want, the kind of swoosh
Mm,
swine you want, the laces that you want, the material that needs to
right.
be used.
Right.
That's mass customization.
Right.
It's not just going into a
Absolutely.
store and picking up one design which someone had designed and said that this is great, and Shrikant must like
Mm.
it.
Right. Absolutely. Let's take a few questions from the audience now. We have Hisham who's asking, how do you handle employee resistance? Resistance in general is one of the factors that affect employee engagement or employee satisfaction. That's a great question because there's always that layer of gap between what the management wants and what the employees perceive it, right? So how what's your take on that?
Great question. I'm sorry I didn't get the name.
Hisham,
Srishant.
Mohammed Hisham.
Oh, great. So, my personal experience is that resistance comes in when there is a lack of communication or trust. Right? And I think
Mm,
you will need to address that first before you can try and address anything else. Because the more you try and keep away from your employees or try and quote the agendas, try and present a different face
mm,
than what your uh, real intention is, you are going to face resistance.
mm.
Because let's be honest, today's generation is much smarter than ever before, right?
Yeah.
They're able to pick up signals. They know what's happening before possibly you even discovered it. Channels of communication informally are so fast that they are able to just kind of make decisions and in their own way make charts in their mind that are maybe colored. And therefore, it's important for you to try and be more transparent, build a connect, and you'll see that resistance go down.
Right.
And be honest and frank with them. At the end of the day, everyone is an adult in the workforce. The least they expect is honesty and trust and being treated as an equal. Moment
Right.
you disturb any of these parameters, you're bound to face an issue where they will be those satisfied employees we talked about, maybe at best, but not engaged.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think I loved it what you said about building trust and communication first, and then being able to expect being able to expect less resistance or being able to expect quick adaptation of any idea strategies or anything else like that. There's another interesting question from Gautam who asks, what values are most important to you as a leader?
As a leader, personally, for me, the value and that I would possibly put right up there is transparency and honesty to my colleagues, to my team. I think nothing beyond that, because it all starts from there. The rest of them then just follow.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Perfect. Transparency is something that I totally resonate with. Being as approachable, as transparent as possible, I think is and
Correct.
being humble, I think is one of the most important traits that anybody should possess as
True.
a leader. Uh, department how to, okay. So Ravi Kumar is asking, a lot of downsizing happening in each department or team. How to overcome this?
Oh, so see, at the end of the day, downsizing, I realize in organizations is not the first option ever.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, when times are tough and when the situation is really as dark as it is today, often business leaders, HR leaders don't have an option.
Hmm.
But in my view, before that option is exercised, I think there are some ways in which, or some options which should be on the table, which are possibly salary cuts, furloughs
Hmm.
for short periods,
Hmm.
and maybe if at all downsizing has to happen, I think organizations should also look at uh, seeing in their own professional network, uh, whether there are other opportunities or organizations which can pick up these individuals, an
Mm,
outplacement kind of support,
mm,
as it's called. And also, very importantly, when things recover and when things get back to normal, I think organizations should also somewhere pick up these individuals first, proactively reach out and see if they're still available, and
right.
onboard them back uh, before looking at outside fresh talent, as they say.
Awesome. I think that those are some great ideas, clearly words of experience. I have a very interesting question that's come here from Bhaskar Joshi. He says, "Hi, because since there could be many offers on the table for a deserving candidate, what kind of strategies or communication we may involve as a company to ensure or to increase the probability of the candidate joining us after sending the offer?" It's a very interesting question, and I'm really keen to find the answer to that too.
So we did something many years ago in Wipro, which have made a tremendous impact. It's much easier to do today. And see, at the end of the day, when an employee has three or four, or prospective employee has three or four offers, and yours is one amongst them, the only thing that can actually clinch it for you is really emotional equation that you manage to build with the candidate, and
Mm,
somewhere showcase that you will have that candidate's back once he or she joins our organization, and you will support them in their success.
mm.
Because for all practical purposes, all the offers from a compensation standpoint may be equal, maybe similar,
Somewhat similar.
maybe a little
Yeah.
different, but most of the time people do give a lot of importance to what their future prospects are, how they will be treated in the organization, and all the softer aspects, right?
Mm,
So what we've done, and that has worked really well, is that the pre-onboarding period, that often time between the joining or the offer letter being given as well as the onboarding, is a period which really needs to be handled very sensitively. And if I were to say, try and create a five-star experience around it. We went to the extent of sending a bouquet of roses to the new managers' houses, delivered to their family at home around the time of 9 p.m. when everyone is sitting down at dinner, 8:30, 9 p.m.
mm,
A taxi comes in, attendant comes in and hands over a bouquet from the function's vice president.
mm.
The next day, a call from the senior function head. I hope everything's fine. You're looked after, and we are waiting for you to join. On the day of the joining, you send across a car to that individual's home to pick him or her up. And this is an example I'm sharing, which is at least 7 to 8 years old, when we didn't have that
Mm,
so-called delivery services and
mm,
e-commerce wave that we have today. So you can imagine how challenging it was, but we still did it, and it made a huge impact. Believe you me, in terms of dropout ratio, it was negligible. Uh,
mm.
the families become part of your joining decision then, because when they see that your boss has sent a lovely bouquet of flowers even before seeing you in person, that's what can be a better feeling.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Then, does that set the expectations too high for them?
Yeah, and then the other competitors can't really match up to that unless they're also equally forward thinking, right?
Right, 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 right. Absolutely. Fantastic. Love the session. I have, I think, one more question. One or two more questions, and then we'll wind up. Unless we have some more questions from the audience. I want to ask you, what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen organizations make that make employees disengaged or disgruntled?
So for this, Srikanth, we'll need another 1 hour, I think, because
That's a long
from a,
list.
from a learning standpoint, yeah, I mean, I think this should be of great value to all our listeners. See, I just hinted at it in the last answer, where engagement is not only when your employee is actually in the organization and sitting with you in the floor, on the floor.
Hmm,
uh, the engagement really approach should start from a pre-onboarding standpoint and even
hmm,
continue once the employee leaves the organization. I think most companies don't follow this approach.
hmm.
I've seen to the extent where after employees leave, managers will delete their name from their phone book and say, now he's left me, he's no longer my well wisher, and so on. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
You've got to see employee engagement as a very ongoing
Yeah.
engagement, even outside of that pure employment start date.
Mm,
Secondly, is that sometimes in productionizing our employee engagement practices, and I'm sure you've seen that a lot of large companies actually end up doing this, is they define that, okay, we will do one Friday event, 4 events per month, and every festival we will do one 4 hour dance performance on the floor,
mm,
and they productionize it to that extent and make it into Excel sheets and trackers, which is
mm,
great in a way. But
mm,
the fact is that then the whole human element somewhere gets lost in that. So
mm,
don't just kind of look at one element of engagement in terms of ensuring that the activities are done or the number of bottles are distributed. It has to be
mm,
heartfelt, it has to be with connect, and it has to be personalized. And of
mm,
course, as I've been saying through and through, I think that one size fits all approach, which is still prevalent for a lot of organizations, is no longer sustainable.
yeah.
Today, if you're handling or designing a reward program for some engagement activity, and maybe I think you are an expert there, you will be able to throw more light. If the employee can actually choose whether he gets a USB stick or a sipper or hard drive, that should be
Yeah.
his or her choice,
Yes.
rather than saying everyone will just get a racket.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfectly said. So I have one last question before we can wind this up. I want to know if you can think of one instance where your employer or your manager did something at work that truly touched your heart.
So I think it's an episode in my book which you might have read as well, and I think more than an engagement activity in that sense, this was when at one of the biggest job fests we had ever done as a recruitment team in the city of Guwahati. My function had actually asked me to deliver the speech after the vice chancellor had delivered his speech.
Mm,
And I can tell you honestly that I think, as far as employee engagement goes, if I was given a survey on that day, I would have rated it 100 out of 10.
mm,
So, a simple thing about recognizing an individual's capability and giving him or her responsibility to do a larger role, to do something very prestigious, can go a long way in just engaging your team. And, it did for me for sure.
right. Right. Perfect. Very well answered. Thank you so much, Vikas, for taking your time off. And I really had a great time. It was very educative, very informative, as well as entertaining as your book itself. So, as promised, let's pick three people who had interesting questions to ask. And I think the answers are pretty clear there. I would say Hisham's question about resistance of how why employees could offer resistance sometimes, and there's the question that Ravi asked about what happens when downsizing. I think it was brilliantly answered, and I think it was a great question that he brought up. And Bhaskar Joshi asked about what somebody can do to increase the probability of candidates taking showing up at a job after taking up the offer. I think these are the three questions in my view. What do you say, because can we give the books to?
I'm in agreement with you, Shrikant. I think happy to share my signed book with them, and congratulations to all the winners.
Thank you.
Lovely to
Thank
have
you
you
so
with us.
much, Vikas. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for being so participative. And thank you for taking your time off on a Friday, because we know it's Friday evening and you had 100 other things to do. But thank you so much. Really appreciate the fact that you took 45 minutes out of your day to be a part of this session. We really hope you enjoyed it. And somebody from our team will get in touch with Hisham, Bhaskar, and Ravi Kumar and reach the gift out to you. Thank you so much, Vikas, for taking your time off. This was really, really, really helpful. Thanks a lot. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Srikant, and thank you, Offineeds, for having me. It was a pleasure, as always. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.